Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to be here today as part of this discussion roundtable in Automation Week 2023 with two absolutely incredible leaders. Today, we're going to jump into this whole area of, you know, digital transformation is just accelerating. AI, generative AI is accelerating. But it's funny, over the last 3 to 4 years, every time I talk about this topic, it always comes back to the data. It always comes back to automation. It always comes back to how do you bring the right data together in the right context and leverage it. I'm super today because we have two incredible leaders joining us. Let me introduce them and then we'll jump right in. First, we have Helena, who is head of SVP and head of Thomson Reuters Labs globally, who is focused heavily in AI and emerging technology and how to leverage that across the enterprise. Her background is phenomenal. So she has had senior leadership positions in data and analytics at Bayer, Johnson and Johnson, and Procter and Gamble. And then our other panelist today is Tarun. He is currently the chief data officer at Constellation Brands, one of my favorite companies because of the products they make. You can do your own research on that. But also another one with incredible experience across enterprises, working extensively in the AI and analytics space with Mars, Coca-Cola, and Georgia Pacific. So first and foremost, let me welcome both of our panelists. Super excited to have you as part of this executive roundtable as part of Automation Week. And let's jump right in. So Helena, I'm going to start with you. Please, a little more introduction and what you're focusing on right now as head of this innovation lab at Thomson Reuters. Very exciting.
Thank you, Andy, and really appreciate the invitation to join you. And looking at the topic and looking at the Automation Week, and it's going to be a really exciting opportunity to also listen to some of the leaders and talk about data innovation, digital transformation. So very much looking forward for today's conversation. At the moment, yes, as you mentioned, that I've been probably working in data analytics for almost my entire career so far.
Which is incredible because unlike Tarun and I, you look like you're about 20. So, you know, how you've worked at all these companies. Tarun and I show our
years experience so far. Appreciate the compliment. But really, indeed, I mean, I have seen really the evolution of data and database decision making and advanced analytics and personalized big data and all of this evolution. And right now, I think we're in the next wave of absolute revolution of AI. And this is what I'm doing right now, because especially Thomson Reuters, AI has been leveraged in the products, the software products that Thomson Reuters is producing for legal, for tax and accounting, for compliance for the past 30 years. And now that with generative AI and large language models, we want to see how it's going to be different from purpose-built AI models, for example, to really make lawyers to do their legal research faster, more efficient, and finding the right information quicker, and for tax and accounting professionals to try to also, leverage this technology and how better to understand the change in regulations and advising their clients more proactively. So all of these are tremendous opportunity and really opportunities in new products and new customer services and better customer services, leveraging AI and leveraging data.
That's awesome. And we'll come back to a couple of things you said, because one is you guys really focus on data as a product and now AI kind of supporting that as well. The other thing is, Tarun, as I come to you, Helena also mentioned this word revolution, and I completely agree. Because in my 30 years across the industry, I think there were three massive transformations that I've seen. One was interestingly just the introduction first of laptops and smartphones and things like that, because it really transformed business models across the board. The second was the introduction of the internet, which for old guys, we remember what the enterprise was before the internet, and it was amazing transformation. And now I really believe this AI is the next big transformation that we're going to see across the enterprises. I know you work on this across companies, but talk a little bit about the role at Constellation Brands and kind of your current focus right now and how you're thinking about it.
Yeah, again, thank you for having me, Andy, and seconding the comments that Helena made. Right, I mean, it's exciting times for all of us, and more so, I feel quite lucky and blessed. Right, I mean, to your point, people can research on what Constellation does, but maybe I can add 2 cents to it. Right, I mean. So far in my entire career, I knew there was one surest and the quickest way to get fired is to have an adult beverage at work. But how much fun can you have when you work for a company that has a bar in the office?
I want to do our next meeting at your headquarters. That's decided.
And you are more than welcome, right? I mean, it'll be more fun, right? I mean, more the merrier, right? I mean, so and maybe I'll take that input and schedule one, right? I mean, sometime soon. So looking forward to it. So I just completed my 90 days at Constellation Brands, CBI, as we like to call it, and what got me excited about CBI was the phenomenal growth the company has had, right? I mean, I'm sure people have heard the news that Modelo is now the #1 beer, but more importantly, CBI's kind of driven 94% growth of the entire beer category, right? And that is phenomenal, right? And with almost 50 plus quarters of continuous growth. Again, in the CPG world, when we talk about growth of 2 to 4%, we feel we are on cloud 9, right? I mean, and this company has kind of achieved high single digits or low double digits, quarter after quarter, year after year. So while it's a great responsibility, it's also equally exciting on how data analytics can play a critical role, including automation and AI, in fueling that growth. And my dream and my ambition is that we can start to play a bigger role in how we shape the continued growth of the company. And as a even though I love the title, right? I mean, the data officer, I feel that the D should stand for decisions rather than data. Because to your point, right? I mean, the focus is to get the right data in the right context, using your words, versus getting the data right. Because we will always be in a deluge of data, and the trick to get to speed to value is to get the right data first versus getting everything right. And I think that's the mind shift that I want to at least bring to CBI and to my team, right? I mean, how do we focus on the decisions? How do we kind of dimensionalize the ones that will give us the biggest impact with the least amount of effort? And how do we underpin it with right data, right analytics, and right automation? And if we can create that arbitrage, I feel we will be on the right trajectory. My focus and goal in the first 90 days is to get our blueprint right. I mean, if we can get the trajectory right, hopefully we can move faster in that trajectory. And when I look at organizations, through my journeys, personal journeys, and talking to peers, leaders, I find that we as an organization, right? I mean, we need 2 systems, right? I mean, we think about systems as our SAPs, our system of records, as I call them, or system of execution, right? I mean, and I think CBI has done a great job in having the due diligence and the discipline and the simplicity to get it right. We are probably in the top 50 companies, right? I mean, that has the right footprint from an SAP perspective and some of the other core technologies. But we are also starting to progress on what I call as a system of exploration, right? That is where AI tends to play a huge role, right? I mean, so exploration by its very means, right? I mean, exploring the unknown, right? And I think that's where we will be able to contribute huge growth. Data is going to play obviously a key role, but not just data, but the large language models. One of the bigger, I would say, revolutions and the pivots that has happened in the last 1 year has been around, the language, in how AI has been able to harness and converse as almost, it's scaringly good, right? I mean, like in having, human-like context, perception, and conversation. So really excited in terms of, where we can help harness the, the value of data, bring in insights, connected with the right folks within the organization to help make better decisions and to continue to fuel our growth.
That's awesome. Well, we'll come back to a couple of those topics, but I love this concept of, with the large language models and where AI is going. Not only, for the last decade, we focused on, bringing the right data together to make decisions and create value quickly. Now we're going to have to not only automate that part, but also automate the part of continuing to keep the models up to date as well. So the learning, by continuing to feed data both inside and outside the company. Elena, let's go back to data, because you guys obviously think of data as a product. You basically help your clients with that. And I'm interested in how you think about that and how important automation, how AI is going to play with that. But then I want to have a little fun, because I don't think we ever thought that way back at the P&Gs and Bears of the world, initially. I think we're starting to get there. So I'm interested how you guys are thinking about it, and what you would tell someone who's kind of in one of those traditional companies versus someone who's, selling data product to other people.
Indeed. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think in terms of enterprise data, no matter what businesses you're in, when we're in the digital transformation or data transformation journey, data as a product, probably the concept really have come into a wider usage and thinking in the past 3-4 years, at least what I have experienced. But what is really helpful right now, that working for a software company, where everything we do is to deliver, to your point, data as a product or software as a product to our customers in all of the domains that we've talked about. It's really to really think about data products, whether it's internal for helping with the internal operations efficiency or effectiveness, or whether it's external facing. We need to have that product management mindset. And so for the creation of the data products, you need to think about what specific business or customer needs you really, really need to deliver. You need to really help, right? So what are the customer pain points, whether it's external customer or internal customer? That's the starting point of creating a product. And then afterwards, you need to have very clear owner for that product development and management, right? So from the development itself to the management. And number 3 is really to creating a data product is not one-off. It's not, I create in order to deliver this report, or I create in order to deliver this AI and to get that answer. No, this is a long-term perspective. We need to, really, the product owner needs to create a plan. How do you have the sustained improvement and success? So that's where, if you think about machine learning, if you think about AI, that's the continuous development, continuously improvement, but also with the mind that how do you keep the model quality when you have new data, right? So all of this are all into that product management mindset. That's number 1. And I think, so really to think about this so systematically, that's only of my Thomson Reuters experience really help with that. Yeah. So in case in the future, I go back to, where, you're really not working for a software product, where you, work for fast moving consumer goods, where you're working for healthcare or, pharmaceutical products, is the same, where data needs to deliver certain customer needs, where, you need to really have this continuous mindset as well for the product. And number 2, I think also very importantly, that since it's a product, you need to think about your customer experience of the product. So you need to really think about that, how your data product needs to really have that good experience that people can find it. It has an easy user interface, so they can use it. They'll continuously use it. They'll keep on coming back to use it. And it needs to have good documentation and metadata to make them really more understandable, more accessible, and especially to the non-technical teams, right? So it's not just facing the data teams and the data experts, but really more for the non-technical teams. But also, it needs to be trustworthy. It needs to be secured with automated access management, so that people do not have to go through 10 different ways and to get access to the data product you create. So all of this is this user experience, customer experience thinking behind the product. I think that's also very, very important.
That's awesome. You hit on one of the key ones. If I went back to the future and found my early Andy Walter in his career, I would say learn more about product management, learn more about software product management and the concepts around it, because I think it applies everywhere, not just on the software side. And I think you articulated that in an excellent way. Tarun, I know in your days at Mars and even before that, but especially at Mars, AI was becoming material to the company. So as it becomes more and more material, how are you thinking about the AI landscape, the changing landscape, the automation landscape, dealing with all the data inside and outside the company? I'm a huge fan of Modelo, so I'm sure you guys are using all kinds of data outside the company too, or that's the goal. So how are you thinking about that changing landscape, and how do you deal with all this data?
It's a great question, and I think to your point, Andy, I think we are at interesting times. I think we, one of the analogy that comes to mind is like, if you get ready to take a long jump, you take 2 steps back, right? And I think we are in that, we are in that moment where, we are getting ourselves ready. We are acknowledging that, AI is not a science experiment anymore. And how do we prepare ourselves both across from a technology perspective, from a data underpinning the data, the data that underpins it, but more importantly in getting the organization ready to kind of embrace it and fuel the trajectory forward. When I was at Mars, right, I mean, we were still dabbling on, how we would think about ChatGPT and whether we would make it accessible to the others, right? I mean, but I find that at CBI, we've already ahead. We've already created, we partnered with OpenAI and we created our CBI version of ChatGPT. And we've made it accessible to anybody and everybody, right? I mean, because the first and the last thing that you want is, we don't want our employees and associates to fear AI, because there's always a human in the loop, right? And therefore, right, I mean, we believe that we need to make it more accessible. We need to educate our organization on the uses and, the right way to get comfortable in being able to use that. And then, harness, the crowdsource, the ideas and the creativity of the people, right? I mean, so I think that's one thing that we are getting ourselves prepared. So that's almost like, how do we take the 2 steps, backwards for the long jump? And in terms of prepping for the long jump, right? I mean, I think what we've done as an organization is created a cross-functional team that spans across IDS. That's the ontology in terms of how we represent IT and data as a service, including our growth division. So there's a very high-powered senior leadership bringing together a cross-functional team and engaging across multiple people, the big 3 in terms of Facebook, Google's, and Microsoft's, but along with also our peer partners to see where and how they are getting success, right? I mean, so we have a roadmap of multiple use cases spanning across sales enablement to product innovation, in leveraging AI from an image recognition to help with identifying opportunities. And we are just getting started in terms of how do we prioritize, where we can invest the minimum to get the biggest impact. So the fact that, we are, I feel, relatively organized and from a mindset and from a process perspective gives us a little bit of an advantage. Obviously data is going to play a key role, right? I mean, nobody has 2 doubts on it. And I love the way Helena explained, right? I mean, the product mindset, right? I mean, again, from my Mars days, there's some of the pivots that we are bringing in, right? I mean, we thought data as an asset. And if you think about that, right, I mean, asset is something that you protect. Whereas if you think about a product, you want your product to be used by as many people as you can, because that's where the product shines, right? I mean, so how do we democratize any and every data while providing, the lineage, the trust, the explorability? We've embraced the principles of data mesh, right? I mean, so we are no longer going to be a monolithic centralized organization dealing with the entire data. We want to push that responsibility closer to the business, where people know and understand their data more than anybody else. But then how do we empower them through the tools, through AI, and make them like the super digital, the warrior that we want them to be.
Yeah. I love this data as an asset, because you almost think of it like an asset as like a building as an asset, and you want to make that asset as efficient as possible. And obviously we know everything on the supply chain driving greater value in that asset is that automation and driving efficiency. So data is the exact same thing. I want to hit on one thing you said. First, one thing I love, which was, and this is things that a lot of executives miss, is sometimes stepping back and bringing a little rigor and thinking to a strategy actually lets you go faster. Some people go, oh, wait, you're going to take 2 steps back, you're moving slow. And then they just plod along with activities. So I love that concept, that 2 steps back before you take the jump, which I think is fantastic. Second is, I want to ask you on talent a second, because if we were this discussion 5-6 years ago, we were all looking for the unicorn, the individual who could do data engineering, Python programming, talk to senior leadership. It sounds like talent and what we need is starting to change. So what's your current thinking on the talent you're looking for, either kind of within the company that you can repurpose or external? How are you thinking about talent right now?
I mean, a great question, right? I mean, at the end of the day, talent's going to play a critical role. And, other than our products, we feel that, one of our magic ingredients is our people, right? I mean, how do we invest and develop those people to, from the skills that we have today to the skills that we need tomorrow, right? And so while, that is going to be a long draw, we are also trying to, create an ecosystem of partners, right? I mean, that can help us be catalysts, right? So to me, it's not about outsourcing our brains, right? I mean, but it's basically, creating a collaborative ecosystem where we can, learn from each other, be it a combination of partners, be it a combination of peer networks, right? I mean, and conversations over a beer.
You had to throw that in, didn't you, over a beer? So, yeah.
It makes it fun, right?
But I am totally with you. I've realized the power of strategic partners externally to what you're doing, and really having strategic partners, and this idea of a network of peers, advisors that can help. That you guys are on a similar journey. How do you learn together from each other, even across industries, even more powerful across industries? So I love how you're thinking.
Especially across the industry. And I think also one thing I would like to add on is to what Tarun has just said, right? So the network of talents, because I mean, things are changing so fast. It's impossible to know everything and, be good both at, business acumen and technology and technical advancement and, AI research and ML engineer and etc. So it's really, one thing with generative AI, what it helps with, tools and powered by ChatGPT, GPT-4, and all the other products in the market, is also making the collaboration much easier, including experts. So I think we need to then really think about that. You don't need just one talent which has it all, and you need really multiple talents to be able to work together, internal and external, and have that ecosystem, but also collaborative tools to enable them to do that, and the reward system to reflect that the collective creativity and really eventually the result it's going to make the entire group having the best result. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. I want to shift gears a little bit now and talk a little bit about, because I'm thinking a lot of folks that are part of this Automation Week event are also, they're faced with another challenge that both of you guys have dealt with as senior executives, and that is, how do you convince company executives, senior leadership, to go on this journey? Now sometimes they want to go too fast, sometimes they want to go too slow, and all that. And it kind of relates also to overall change management. So I would love, Helena, I'll start with you again, with current or previous experiences. What's been your best experience or strategies for bringing company executives along on it, or dealing with change management across the organization?
I think one thing is very often, to your point, right, is the problem might not be, wanting to go too slow and the hesitation of adaptation. It's actually wanting to go faster than the rest of the organization. So I think throughout my journey and talking about change management, it's really every level of the organization, you need to take them along. And the best way of taking them along, whether it's your own organization or whether it's with customers, is co-creation and co-ownership. I think that's, really starting from ideation. I mean, right now we're talking about innovation, right? So AI-powered innovation or innovation with AI. And everybody has played with, probably DALL-E or Midjourney or ChatGPT, GPT-4, or some others. And they are all interested in how exactly that's going to, be adapted into my work. So the way is to really harvest that interest and to really start with, hey, let's, think backwards and think about what are the problems you're having today in your work. And what are the problems that you really want to solve, and let's work out together, because you have the subject matter expertise and I have the technical expertise, and let's bring things together to identify, hey, this is probably the problem we want to solve together, and these are the technical part that we want to kind of test, experiment, and here you are helping us to tell us every step of the way whether we're delivering the benefit that we think we are delivering. So that kind of iterative and collaborative process is really what helps with convincing the entire organization. And by convincing the entire organization, you certainly are convincing the top executives.
Awesome. I love that. And even that co-creation with some selective senior leaders that are willing to put some skin in the game with you, yes, I think is incredibly powerful. So I love that concept. Tarun, how about from your side? So convincing senior leadership or dealing with change management across the organization, what have been your kind of key insights?
Yeah, and a great question, right? I mean, I think I've said in the past, right? Any data analytics AI initiative at the end becomes a change management initiative, right? I mean, while data and technology continues to be, plays an important role, it is necessary but not sufficient, right? I mean, so change management, is an important aspect. So a couple of insights, right? I mean, the change management cannot be an afterthought. You need to start with it. In fact, I would say even before, as we kind of continue on the journey, right? I mean, so we have that notion and that idea across the entire life cycle. I think that's one. I think the second thing, I agree with you, Helena, that at the top management level, it's not about it's they want to go fast and maybe twice as fast. And I think the top management is sometimes a lot more open and accepting, versus as you get lower down. And I think you got to win both the hearts and the minds and the hearts, right? And I think it requires to pivot slightly differently, because the senior management gets excited about new tech, new technology, but then, when you get closer and deeper into the organization, you got to make it, a little more personable. You got to make it a little more inspiring. And what is in it for me? Right, and make it fit for purpose. And I think bringing in aspects of user centricity, design thinking, again, it's less about technology, it's about empowerment, as you get closer down to the organization. So having that pivot and that fungibility in terms of being able to articulate, inspire the leadership, but at the same time being able to connect it in a personable way. I think also to your point, right? I mean, it has to be co-created, collaborative, But those would be the two things. And to me, it's always about the mind shift, right? I mean, so there's a very thin line between, being fearful versus being excited about the unknown, right? So if we can create that pivot in terms of, building that excitement from an inspirational way about the unknown, I think, we'll be set.
That's super exciting. Yeah, I totally agree with both you. And Tarun, you made me, smile because you hit the fifth key one that so many leaders forget. So when you think about a major transformation, you want to share kind of where we've been, where we're going, how we're going to get there, why this is the right time to do this. And then the fifth one is, what does it mean to me, each individual? So if you don't answer that question, they're not going to run through the wall with you, so it's, that's incredibly powerful. I can't not take the advantage of having two senior executives here. We have, thousands of people joining Automation Week, and I would just be interested in, you've reached the chief data officer, the SVP role. You guys have both been incredibly successful. Any experiences that were critical to your journey that you'd want to share with the group that are still aspiring to get to where you're at? Tarun, I'll start with you this time. So what experiences would you encourage people to really embrace that helped you on your journey?
Yeah, I think, the experiences when I look at my journey, right? I mean, incredibly lucky to be, part of, multiple Fortune 500, right? I mean, when I look at my journeys, right? I mean, GP kind of gave me the breadth across the organization, right? I mean, I was trying to bring in net new capabilities. Coke was, interconnecting data analytics to a strategy, right? I mean, and giving me the depth, and, Mars was about, value and scale, right? I mean, so I would say if I were to tease out one thing, as I said, right, I mean, it's not about the data, it's not about digitization, it's at the end of the day all about value and how we can connect to decisions, right? I mean, so one experience is, just getting, being ruthless about how decisions are being made, getting, connected to understanding the people aspect, right? I mean, from a user centricity, I would say the two things that I feel have been critical, right? I mean, how can we get value focused, get the right data soon, and be user centric.
Awesome. Helena, how about yourself? What are the experiences you felt were critical?
Value is absolutely number one.
Yeah, good.
Really, whatever we do, right? So, I mean, but in order to discover the value, but probably just one piece that where I find tremendously valuable for me is to really, really be in the shoes of the customers, whether it's your internal customer decision maker or external customers. And I really, really enjoy, like during P&G time to store checks and the really, really talking to consumers. And right now that really to talk to the lawyers who really are having, looking at what are their most time-consuming tasks and thinking about a solution for it. I really, really enjoy it. And that helps you to think about, okay, what value can I bring?
Awesome.
How can we make their life better? So
that's cool. Yeah, changing the day in the life and changing for the better it's always been a huge thing for me as well. Okay, I'm gonna end on a fun question because this is hard work, this thing we're doing with automation and AI and dealing with all this data. So if I gave you a magic wand and you could have anything you wanted, in this space, what would it be? Helena, I'm going to start with you. So I make you queen for the day. You can have whatever you want in this whole automation, AI, data space. What would you want?
Well, I think right now, the biggest evolution that generative AI is bringing is really from in automation perspective, right? So it's really, before we were doing automation on repetitive, simple tasks. And right now with generative AI, it really has the potential to automate entire tasks, obviously with human expertise and human augmentation and checks and balances. And but I would really love to see magic wand, but I think we're the people who need to make it happen. Is really we're making the world more efficient with full automation, with fully leverage the potential of generative AI.
Awesome. All right, Tarun, you're 90 days in, so maybe a magic wand is perfect timing for you right now. If you could have anything you wanted, what would it be in this space?
Ooh, I mean, that's always a tough one, Andy. I've enjoyed, but equally struggled, right? I mean, I sometimes keep joking, right? I mean, wish I could always get exact change for anything I wanted, right? I mean, that would be at a personal level, but at a professional level, right? I mean, I think, right? I mean, just getting more decision oriented in terms of what questions do we need to answer. I think you've probably heard me say that, right? I mean, I would love for my consumers and my stakeholders to ask me hard and tough questions, because that continues to inspire us to bring in data analytics and technology and automation to help it, right? I mean, I think broadening that aperture as much as we can to make it bolder, to make it inspiring. And if we have the right questions, I think we will get the right solutions, right? Versus the other way around. I don't want the to put the cart in front of the horse, right? I mean, so how do we get our stakeholders, because we know that if it's not collaborative, it's not driven by the business, it doesn't go too far.
Awesome. Well, thank you both very much for joining this Automation Week 2023 discussion panel. And you heard it here first. The next one we're doing is that Constellation Brands over Modelo. So thank you very much, Tarun and Helena. I appreciate you guys joining, and this was a fantastic discussion. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having us, Andy.